Yo. Hello, hôm nay là ngày 21 tháng 6. Này, cuối tháng 6 à? Lại sắp hết tháng lại nhận lương đến nơi rồi. Sau khoảng 2 tháng trời rất là nóng, tháng 4, tháng 5, hơn 2 tháng thì bắt đầu đến mấy ngày vừa rồi, nhất là hôm nay này, trời rất là lạnh luôn. Mình còn phải kiểu đéo nồi à, mẹ xem đi. Xem đi, nói ơi, cho mày này nha. JPMorgan CEO. Xem nào trước, xem này trước đi, cái này dễ xem trước. JPMorgan CEO James Smith Dimon không phải Diamond. Dimon speaks, the world listen.
You guys love these meet and greet
Yes,
things.
we
Like,
do.
how are you?
It's good to have a good
Have
handshake.
we ever met? Like,
I feel like I know you because I've seen you so many times.
vice versa.
Jamie Dimon is an institution. Since 2005, he's been the head of the world's biggest bank, JPMorgan Chase. He's widely seen as a rock in the storms of 21st century finance, and even, at times, a kind of guardian of the US and global economy.
He's a leader, and he understands the importance of stepping up at a time where there's great uncertainty.
This country is a lot better off because Jamie Dimon has been running JPMorgan.
Diamond à?
He's also a highly visible figurehead in the
Đọc là Diamond nhưng mà là
banking
Dimon.
world. Always in demand for
Dimon thì hơi
media
kỳ.
appearances, where he reliably delivers hot takes on the current thing.
I could care less what Bitcoin trades for, how it trades, why it trades, who trades it. If you're stupid enough to buy it, you'll pay the price for it one day.
Dimon always seems to be ready with blunt insight into the events of the moment. But I wanted to zoom out and talk about his broader philosophy, to learn about the principles that guide the decision-making of this incredibly influential person.
Principle.
A family man from Queens who's at least as invested in being a dad and a grandpa as he is in shaping the global economy.
So you're on the road how often?
I say, actually, we checked last year, it was like 120 nights or something like that. But some of it is COVID catch-up. I feel like I need to visit people.
Right.
And all these conferences are on again, and of course, I'm here, I do more than just this conference. So.
Right. Do you have any travel hacks?
What does that mean?
You know, ways to make your life
here?
easier. Yes.
Well, I try. When I land, when I exercise, when
Yeah.
I eat, when I don't get tortured by people. You have a lot of folks from Bloomberg here.
This is the Jamie Dimon treatment.
Exactly.
Jamie
So how long have
Dimon.
you been at Bloomberg?
I have been at Bloomberg 13 years.
Where are you from?
I'm from Hawaii originally.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
And married?
Married.
Children?
4 kids.
Holy moly.
Yeah. How do you do it?
What do you mean?
How did you juggle it all?
I pretty much had a binary life. I worked and family. So you didn't see me in black ties and red carpets and very rare stuff like that. So big family life.
I know, I've heard you're a family man.
Yeah.
How old are your daughters now?
38, 36, 34, and 7 grandkids, 6 girls, and finally a boy.
Do you babysit?
Yeah. My wife does more than I do, but I do. We do it together. They come over, sleepovers, and all that kind of stuff.
Any parenting advice?
Just love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you like to do with your daughters now?
Everything. We barbecue, we eat, we go to restaurants, we travel, we listen to music, we do wine. I love my son-in-laws.
Quite the test going to meet Jamie Dimon as your future father-in-law.
They have no problem.
I'd be shaking in my
And God
boots.
knows if I ever say something where I'm wrong, they correct me. Just like they like finding me wrong about something.
If that sounds modest, well, there's nothing modest about Dimon's professional life. JPMorgan Chase is the world's biggest bank by market cap and one of the biggest companies of any kind. In 2023, they set a record for the most profits of any U.S. bank ever, $49.6 billion.
Thế thôi hả?
It's no exaggeration to say that entire economies depend on this bank. JPMorgan played a crucial role in stopping the bleeding during the 2008 financial crisis,
The better we do here, the better it'll be for the United States economy.
and more recently stepped in to mitigate the damage from the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic. Dimon regularly speaks with prime ministers and presidents around the world, and there's been plenty of speculation he might run for office someday. All this translates into a great deal of power and influence.
You've built a bank that's $4 trillion in assets and counting.
4.000 tỷ thì còn hợp lý, 44 tỷ là như nào? Được. 44 tỷ vào đấy là tiền gì?
Kind ever. 49.6, a
Được.
record.
Ok. Profit. Profit 44 tỷ là dã man đấy.
We're the biggest bank community. We bank to be big.
Great deal of power and influence.
You've built a bank that's $4 trillion in assets and counting. How big is too big?
I think the question is what works for consumers and industries and stuff like that. So, if you want to build a Boeing aircraft, you have to be big. You can pretend that you don't. If you want to do what JPMorgan does, we move $10 trillion of money around the world every day. We bank some of these companies in 30 countries. We bank countries. We bank the World Bank, the IMF. We bank the United States government. You have to be big. You can't do those things and be small. I applaud the small banks. We're the biggest bank, community banks and regional banks and stuff like that. And I understand, some of the stress they're under. We're trying to help. So it's not either or.
So going a little bigger picture now, you run the biggest bank in the world. You have our money. You've got world leaders on speed dial. That's a lot of power. How do you decide when and how to wield that power?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a lot of people on speed dial. So you say all that. Sometimes I think I'm just riding the Bronco and hanging on for dear life. I love what I do. I try to talk to everyone. I try to keep my mind open. One of the benefits from traveling the world, I was just in Mumbai and Switzerland and seeing clients. You learn a lot, and you try to make sure that you're doing a proper assessment of the world. That you're looking at the options. You're not like just saying we're going to do this. I look at it as part of our job to try to help countries do the best they can for their citizens. So we bank countries. We also advise them on skills and trade and economics. You look at our research, it's a lot around how does an economy run. So when you go to when I got back from Mumbai, we research 150 companies now or something like that. So we're educating the world about those companies. We're educating the world about the Indian economy. As we do that, we also educate the Indians about what works in their economy and what doesn't work. And those are important things to lift up society.
You've got this reputation as a sort of white knight for the economy. Do you ever feel pressure to come in with the save?
I feel a tremendous amount of pressure to do. Obviously, my family comes first, okay? But to do a great job for my company and our clients. I also feel a huge burden to do a good job for my country. So, when my country wants me to do something, and we talk all the time to, the senators and regulators, what can we do to make the system better, to lift up the country, lift up inner cities? We're trying to figure out how to make society better. And I do consider that part of our job.
You grew up talking finance at the kitchen table as a kid. What was it like growing up Jamie Dimon? What do you think prepared you for all this?
Well, I grew up in Jackson Heights, Queens, and my grandparents, 3 were Greek immigrants. One was born here. I don't think any of the 4 finished high school. There was a loud table, people arguing and stuff like that. But my parents my dad was a stockbroker, I was the only one who took interest in that, reading the paper, understanding it. I bought a stock when I was 12, 13, or 14. They didn't ask us to go into finance. So my older brother's a physicist, my other brother's a teacher. And so it was basically do the best you can, make the world a better place, treat everyone with respect, have a purpose in life. It was more around that. But a lot of intellectual debate at the table.
Dimon quickly rose through the ranks of finance. Right out of Harvard Business School, he became the protege of his dad's boss, Sandy Weil, a legendary banking dealmaker. Dimon and Weil oversaw a series of massive bank mergers together through the 80s and 90s, until in 1998, Weil forced Dimon out of Citigroup, and Dimon struck out on his own. Dimon landed on his feet as chief executive of Chicago-based Bank One. When Bank One was acquired by JPMorgan Chase in 2004, Dimon quickly ascended to the top spot. Just a couple years later, in 2007, Dimon warned shareholders that the bank was seeing trouble in its subprime mortgage business. When the financial crisis hit, JPMorgan's relatively cautious investing approach meant that they were able to help avert catastrophe by acquiring the struggling Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual. That saved the government billions in bailouts and made Chase the biggest commercial bank in America. Though American banks came in for some well-deserved criticism during this time, Dimon emerged as a staunch defender of JPMorgan, and the financial system as a whole as a force for good.
224,000 employees. We give health care to 400,000 people. We pay $10 billion a year in federal taxes. Over the last 5 years, we've given $600 million to organizations. This is a terrific company. And when I hear the constant vilification of corporate America, I personally don't understand it. And I would ask a lot of our folks in government to stop doing it, because I think it's just hurting our country at this point.
More crises would follow. In 2012, a rogue JPMorgan trader nicknamed the London Whale lost the company more than $6 billion, putting the harsh spotlight of scandal on Dimon and calling his leadership into question. But Dimon weathered it all, keeping the top job even as other top U.S. banks have gone through multiple CEOs. Along the way, he became a billionaire, a rarity among banking executives. Many attribute Dimon's success to what's known as the fortress balance sheet. Essentially, he takes the cautious approach, never getting so over-leveraged that the bank can't withstand a major unforeseen shock. The strategy has been criticized for leaving profits on the table, but it looks pretty smart when a crisis comes along. Profit standing, he takes the cautious
approach, tiếp cận thận trọng.
Never getting so over-leveraged that the bank can't withstand a major unforeseen shock. The strategy has been criticized for leaving profits on the table, but it looks pretty smart when a crisis comes along.
Going way back, I used to do a presentation on financial crises, going back to those blowups in Ginnie Mae's, Penn Central, commercial paper, the 87 crash, the 90 recession, the 74 recession. And if you make a list of all those things, you realize, and I'm not making fun of everything, they happen all the time. And the best preparation is, in our business, capital and liquidity, which Dodd-Frank improved. We already had a lot. Be prepared. You can't be prepared after the fact. You got to be prepared before the fact. So when I talk about risk management, it's always about the range of outcomes. Can we handle them? And beyond that, we talk about geopolitical crises, cyber. I put cyber high risk. You got to be prepared for that stuff. And it does happen. And it's going to surprise you one day. Just like, am I surprised if oil? Will I be surprised if oil goes to 150? I will not.
Yeah.
It can easily happen if a bunch of factors fall a certain way. So the best thing is be prepared for any business. When you think about risk, think about things that can go terribly wrong. Can you survive them? It could be technology, it could be government regulations, it could be literally the weather. If you're a restaurant, that might close you down. If you lose this week's business, you're out of business, you don't have enough cash. So you should think all that through.
Bill Gates once said, banking is necessary, banks are not. To what extent could AI or fintech replace traditional banks?
So I think, first of all, I remember him saying banks are dinosaurs. I spoke to him about it in 1997, and he was dead wrong. He'd probably agree to that. But he's not wrong that technology changes everything. And if anyone is complacent or arrogant or think that because you have a big position today, you can have a big position tomorrow, that's a mistake. But then you have to define, what is banking? Someone's going to have to hold the money. Someone's going to have to move the money. Someone's going to have to raise the money. Someone's going to have to do research, around money. Those services will still be around. And, hopefully we're doing it and using a lot of tech to do a better job at it. But I've always thought it's very possible that some tech thing, disintermediates a piece of that. And I've been writing about, big tech going to our business. We got fintech, but we also have big tech. And they will embed payment systems in there. Some are going to white label banks, kind of what Apple did. They have the right to do that. I'm not against that. I would be against unfair use of their position to dominate us in a business.
Well, Apple is going deeper into financial services.
No
Do you
question.
worry about the Bank of Apple?
Well, we're going to compete. So they have a tough competitor, but they hold money, move money. Yeah, they're a form of a competitor. We also partner with them, but I'm very used to partnering and competing with lots of people. So,
Existential threat?
I don't think it's an existential threat, but I think if we were complacent about it, yes.
Still, as with most industries, an AI revolution is coming for finance. The question is, how much about banking will change? Some predict AI will enable us to put our money on autopilot, telling you where to invest, planning your retirement, and even filing your taxes.
I know you mentioned ChatGPT in your annual letter. Have you tried it?
Yeah. If I had my phone, I'd show you.
What do you use it for?
I just ask it questions.
Like what?
I don't remember. What's Emily Chang going to ask me?
You've got a top-notch group investigating AI. What are they up to? What's the next level of finance you think AI can unlock?
Yeah. So I think the most important thing is that AI is real. We already have thousands of people doing it. Top scientists around the world, Manuel Velosa, who ran Carnegie Mellon machine learning. And it's a living, breathing thing. So people want to answer, what's it going to do? It's a living, breathing thing. It's going to change. There are going to be all different types of models and different types of tools and technology. But the way to think about it for us is every single process, so errors, trading, hedging, research, every app, every database, you're going to be applying AI. So it might be as a co-pilot. It might be to replace humans. Like, AI is doing all the equity hedging for us for the most part. It's idea generation, it's large language models, it's note-taking while you're talking to someone, and while it's taking notes, it may actually say to you that, here's the thing of interest the client might be interested in. All error, all customer service. It's a little bit of everything.
But it is going to replace some jobs.
Of course, yeah. But I look, folks, people have to take a deep breath, okay? Technology's always replaced jobs. Your children are going to live to 100 and not have cancer because of technology. And literally, they'll probably be working 3.5 days a week. So technology's done unbelievable things for mankind. But, planes crash, pharmaceuticals get misused. There are negatives. This one, the biggest negative in my view is AI being used by bad people to do bad things. Think of cyber. But, the fact, and I do think, eventually have legal guardrails around it. It's kind of hard to do because it's new, but it will add a huge value. And, for JPMorgan, if it replaces jobs, we hope to redeploy people.
So is there going to be a point where I can turn to Chat JPM and say, I have 30 years, or I want to get rich quick, what should I do with my money?
Well, the rich quick, I hope it tells you that you're crazy. Yeah, but we, in some ways, can do a little bit already today. And, usually, if you look at like wealth plans that we have, which I think are quite good, they have a lot of AI embedded in that, or analytics embedded in that. And as soon as have more AI, all that AI is going to do is know more about you, learn more about you, look at patterns, and look at successful things in the past. And yeah, so AI will be a huge aid to things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So do you see like a finance super app in our future, or?
Yeah, you already have that a little bit. So 10 years ago, I took the people who ran retail, Gordon Smith, and a whole team. I said, you're getting an airplane and you're going to China. And they said, why? We're American. I said, go to China. And they went to Ping An and Tencent and WeChat and Alipay and all that. And they had all the super apps. I made them come back and do a big chart of super apps, all the services they do.
Super app sờ quạt.
What they do
Một tím luôn
is
này.
a whole heck of a lot. WeChat, for example, combines text messaging, a social network, and a widely used mobile payment system, and has over 1.2 billion active users. The kind of ubiquity most American companies can only dream of.
So I think in America, it won't be a super app. It'll be, I'm going to call them mini super apps. So you can already do a lot of stuff with us around money, but that's why we do travel. It's an adjacency. It's not just a credit card. Now we want to offer you great travel and great hotels and great restaurants. And so there are all these adjacencies on everything we do that will be are tech-driven and will be increasingly AI-driven.
What's your biggest AI fear?
Well, I think Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt wrote a book about, if it gets used in weapons. But, and that obviously could be terrifying if it's deciding who the enemy is. And then, obviously it's going to be used in cyber. It's
The Age of AI, National Bestseller. Eric Smith là có phải Google không nhỉ? Đúng không? Eric Smith là từ Google, ông Google đúng không? Eric Smith. Đúng không? Former CEO Google.
deciding who the enemy is. And then, obviously it's going to be used in cyber. Bad guys will use AI. And I think we need guardrails. No one knows exactly what they should be yet. But it's not going to stop bad guys. So we got to think through the guardrails here. You want to have plenty of innovation. You need guardrails, like, maybe it'll tell you at the bottom of something this is generated by AI. But the bad guys still use it. And the question is how we're going to, I'm a little concerned about that.
While AI is changing the technology of banking, geopolitics is creating a different kind of disruption. With tensions between powerful countries like the US, Russia, and China reaching a boiling point, there are signs the economic ties that bind the world are starting to fray. Dimon, for his part, strikes a tone of cautious optimism about current events, but warns that we're living in a very dangerous time. Our conversation took place before the recent outbreak of conflict in the Middle East, which he said will create ripple effects that extend far beyond the region.
Where's China on the list of risks?
When I say geopolitical, that's the big one. It's It's the thread from Ukraine, oil and gas, food, migration, all our relationships, the most important one being China. That is the most important for the future of the world. And obviously Ukraine is affecting it. And in fact, it's very hard to see really positive outcomes with China until the Ukraine war is resolved. Hopefully, whether Ukrainians could say they have a victory of some sort.
You've said you're worried about another Trump presidency. How worried?
Look, we need good American leadership. And I think that we need to explain to people why this is so important for the world. And so there's a little bit of this, America first, and no American president is going to say America second. But what we need to explain is why Ukraine is important to us and why American security relies on global security and why our allies rely on that. And if they can't rely on America, they will have to rely on someone else. And so I just think it's very important. Bob Gates writes in his book, The Exercise of Power, about the symphony of power. And it's all the soft things, not the military, which we've overused, but diplomacy, development finance, education, communication.
Technology.
And obviously economic, trade, investment, all those things. And I think we need to do a better job in that.
You're revered for your long-term view, so I'd just like to tick through a few topics quickly and get a quick sort of one-sentence long-term view. What's your long view on China?
It'll be okay, but we need really good American leadership to do that. And don't worry, they're not a 10-foot giant. They have a lot of issues. America's got a lot of strains. I like the fact the American government's talking to them constantly now.
Crypto.
If you mean crypto like Bitcoin, I've always said it's a fraud.
So no hope for it.
Well, if they think they're a currency, there's no hope for it. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a public, decentralized Ponzi. If it's a crypto coin that can do something, like a smart contract, that has value. There will be smart contracts, and blockchain works. So to the extent crypto is accessing certain blockchain things, yeah, that might have some value.
American leadership.
The most important thing for the world in the next 100 years. Warren Buffett would tell you one of the great things about America is our constant resiliency, ability to adjust. I mean, we adjusted pretty quickly to bad COVID and then getting out of COVID, and American leadership moves pretty quickly, and autocratic leadership gets stasis. So you got to look at, sometimes democracy is messy, but it also allows change.
Dimon is 68, and the question of succession is looming. In 2021, he received a bonus to stay on for another 5 years. And while various JPMorgan executives are rumored to be in the running to replace him, nothing official has been announced. Given the success of Dimon's 18-year run, no one is particularly eager for him to move on. And for the moment, he shows no signs of slowing down.
What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
You have to work hard. I mean, that doesn't, but work smart. A lot of people don't, they waste so much time and they don't think carefully. And there's that great quote, "I'm sorry I wrote you such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one." That's respect to people. You get your thoughts together. Have a process in place for decision making. Don't allow yourself to become weaponized, at all. And don't have it, to the extent you have a temper, it works against you. You always have to end up apologizing. Have a thought process around things that are complicated, and you'll get better over life. You don't have to answer everything all at once. I tell all the people at JPMorgan, everyone should take care on their own, their mind, their body, their spirit, their soul, their friends, their family, their health. They have to do that. It's part of their life. If you mess that up, it makes everything else particularly hard. So, and I heard a great speech from a woman once who said, "You can have it all, you just can't have it all at the same time."
I like that advice. Yeah. What else do you want to accomplish in the world, aside from making your bank succeed?
Most important, family. And I have 3 wonderful kids, 2 wonderful son-in-laws, 7 great grandkids. That is the most important. Mm-hmm. Second most important is my country, the United States of America. I'm a red-blooded, full-throated, free enterprise American patriot. And don't misunderstand that. And so therefore that is a big effort of mine personally, and my company stands behind that to the extent we should. And then inside the company, I just hope people say, we're going to miss the son of a bitch when he's gone. And he made the world a better place, and he created opportunity and for all of us and our clients.
You're sure you're not running for office?
I'm pretty sure.
I just spoke to some friends who left the U.S. who said if you ran, they'd come back.
I got 4 more votes.
Got 4 more votes. Đúng kiểu top tier nhỉ. Nói chuyện nhẹ nhàng, cư xử nhẹ nhàng ấy, mọi thứ đều rất là nhẹ nhàng, rất là đơn giản. Mà bữa nay mình lướt qua mấy cái comment ở đây mà để xem là mọi người nhận xét gì thì thấy không giống với ở những cái ở trong video lắm. Nghe cute vãi, nhưng mà những cái đoạn 208 ấy, ôi à, ông nhìn trẻ vãi, mà bây giờ sau khoảng mười mấy năm trông già vãi chừng, trông nhau vãi chừng. Đây.
A lot of our
Tóc bạc hết rồi. Xem tiếp đây, cái thứ hai này, US defeated Japan trong Thế chiến 2 á. Defeated, đúng rồi. Japan almost won World War II. Thằng này cũng hay này, thằng kênh này cũng hay này. Gần như là video nào cũng phải xem luôn đấy. Gần như, bởi vì dạo này gần đây nó hơi bị kiến thức nhiều quá, hơi mệt.
This region, the Pacific, recently it's heating up. And now is probably a good time to rewind and remember what this region looked like back when there was a war happening out here on these islands, a war between great powers. Let's start right here, at the end of the 1800s, when Japan is expanding fast. Conquering territory and taking the resources, becoming a powerful empire. By 1940, their empire looks like this. It includes hundreds of remote islands out here in the Pacific, and Japan uses these colonies to extract resources that fed this growing conquest. But they don't have everything they need yet. They still rely on the US for the most vital of resources, oil and metal. Now, the US doesn't necessarily like how aggressive Japan is being in their region, but they tolerate it. That is, until Japan allies itself with Nazi Germany, and then continues its expansion into a French colony and threatens to completely cut off the US from its ally China. So the US, along with Britain and the Netherlands, cut Japan off of oil, gas, iron, and steel. These are vital resources, so this is a major blow to Japan. They calculate that they only have 2 more years before they run out of this vital energy. They must act quickly, so they start looking further south, to land that is known to have a lot of oil. The problem for Japan is that this is all controlled by European empires. Japan makes a plan to kick out all of these Europeans and establish their own access to oil and metal so they aren't reliant on outsiders. And they sell this ambitious plan to their people by saying that they actually want to liberate Asia from European domination. So, in December 1941, they initiate this plan, sending ships and planes to drop bombs all over the region that they want to conquer. And to stop the Americans from coming to the Europeans' rescue, Japan has already sent a large chunk of its navy to surprise the Americans by bombing their navy in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. It was their first step for kicking off this larger offensive. The attacks on Pearl Harbor and all over Asia were a huge, bold, and risky move for Japan. No one thought they would do it. It came as a massive surprise, and as a result, it was incredibly successful for Japan's goals. The US and its allies are now at war, but beating back Japan will not be easy. Japan has a powerful navy, and not only is America's Pacific fleet severely damaged because of the attack on Pearl Harbor, but around this same time, Hitler has taken the moment to declare war on the US, dragging them into the European theater of World War II. Over the next 7 months, Japan takes even more territory.
Powerful and resourceful gangsters have banded together to make war upon the whole human race. Their challenge has now been flung at the United States of America. Together with other free peoples, we are now fighting to maintain our right to live among our world neighbors in freedom, in common decency, without fear of assault. We are now in this war.
The US has to surrender the Philippines, its foothold in the Pacific, and Japan forces capture and kill tens of thousands of American and Filipino troops in just one of what would become many horrific war crimes they commit during this war. By the middle of 1942, Japan has achieved its goals of kicking out European empires and securing for itself a massive empire full of resources. They're now self-sufficient, and they're growing. And they're not done. They're drunk on all of this success, and some military leaders want to keep pushing east, all the way to here, which would cut the US off from its big ally Australia. So they set their sights on this American base, located on a small atoll called Midway. If they could take Midway, the US would be so weak, Japan calculates, that they would be forced to settle this conflict, leaving Japan with all of this newly conquered territory. Alas, that's not what happened. In May of 1942, Japan sends a massive fleet of hundreds of planes, accompanied by battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and submarines, as well as 4 of their precious aircraft carriers. Now remember, this is World War II, and you can't really fight a war out here in the ocean without aircraft carriers, which enabled Japan's planes to land and refuel while fighting deep out in this ocean. Aircraft carriers are vital, so Japan is preparing to conquer Midway. But what they don't know is that American codebreakers in Hawaii have cracked Japan's encrypted communication and are aware of their battle plans days before the attack. This makes all the difference, and in a 4-day battle, the US defeats Japan's navy at Midway, destroying all 4 of their precious aircraft carriers in the process.
The odds looked impossible, but when it was all over, the Japanese had suffered their greatest naval defeat in history.
It landed United States in just one small part of the Japanese Empire. And remember that the US military has to travel thousands of kilometers just to get here. Distance is also a problem for Japan, who, yes, just conquered all of this territory, but that means that it now has to ship resources back to the mainland. It has to get men, doctors, food, and supplies out to all of this land thousands of kilometers away, creating brand new supply routes. We found this old Japanese map drawn up during the war that shows all of these colonies shaded with a red marker and showing this dizzying web of supply lines needed to keep the war going. This was a logistical nightmare for Japan, but it was also a key vulnerability that the US would exploit in this conflict. So the US begins cutting into the Japanese Empire. It's off to a slow start, but eventually they settle onto a strategy of targeting certain islands, not the ones that were the most fortified, but the ones that would get them one step closer to the Japanese mainland, but also give them proximity to these supply lines, the supply lines that keep Japan's war machine running. The US starts conquering these lesser fortified islands and using them to target the ships that carry food and weapons and supplies throughout the Japanese Empire. I found this data set that shows every merchant vessel that the US and its allies sunk during these years. It's a lot. American submarines alone would go on to sink 5 million tons of Japanese shipping and naval vessels. This strategy of targeting the supply lines was a game changer for the US, allowing them to weaken the Japanese Empire by targeting its cargo, like they did down here in this key Japanese military stronghold in the south of the empire. The US and its allies first conquered nearby islands, and then used these islands as a jumping-off point to target the supply lines. But instead of mounting an attack on this stronghold, the US focused on the supply ships that were bringing food, ammunition, reinforcements, and medical supplies to this stronghold. This left tens of thousands of Japanese soldiers stranded to die of starvation and disease. The US was able to take out a key Japanese base without having to fight a battle. The island hopping strategy was really working. And if you look closely at this map, you'll see that it allowed the US to bypass these heavily fortified Japanese islands, focusing more on cutting them off than trying to conquer them, while also getting the US closer and closer to the mainland. As 1945 rolls around, the US continues to beat Japan back. The 2 US forces converge to retake the Philippines. All these newly captured islands allow the US to deploy their new high-tech plane, the B-29 bomber. This thing could fly super high and deep into the Japanese mainland and drop 20,000 pounds worth of bombs.
7 tấn. 7
Japan
tấn
is
bom.
clearly losing by now. So they start to resort to more brutal tactics, like having their pilots fly their planes into US ships in suicide attacks, a deadly tactic that not only led to immense damage to the US Navy, but also had a psychological element, a realization that the enemy was willing to go to great lengths to fight back. But even so, Japan's empire continued to shrink, almost as quickly as it had expanded. But the closer the US gets to the mainland, the more brutal the fighting is becoming. For a variety of reasons, there's really only one path to invade the mainland. You have to hop along this southern island chain and invade from the south. So the US sets their sights on perhaps the most important island in the Pacific, Okinawa.
Okinawa.
Japan knows that the US is coming for Okinawa, so they recruit around 40,000 local men, giving some of them only spears to defend themselves. Together with the army, they dig tunnels and caves and trenches and bunkers. The army gives out hand grenades to civilians, telling them to commit suicide instead of surrender, warning them that the Americans will be brutal and violent to anyone they capture. Japan wants this battle to convince the Americans that invading the mainland is a bad idea. It's their last-ditch effort to avoid defeat. The US hits the beach at Okinawa, starting one of the bloodiest battles of the entire war. 82 days of violence that leaves a third of the population dead, a total of around 100,000 Japanese in addition to 12,000 American soldiers. And the US wins. They now control the most valuable island of them all, the island that will enable them to invade the mainland. But they're also left with a horrifying clarity of how serious Japan is about not surrendering, about fighting until the very end. Invading the mainland will be costly. Meanwhile, in Europe, Hitler and his allies have been defeated. The winners get together and issue a statement to Japan: unconditional surrender or face prompt and utter destruction. Now that Hitler is defeated, the Soviet Union is also preparing to join the US to deal the final blow to Japan. But Japan doesn't reply to the demand for surrender, and the Allies see this as a rejection. Back in the US, in the deserts of the Southwest, the US has just successfully tested an atomic bomb. So now they have a decision to make. They either continue their momentum and invade the mainland of Japan and face not only Japanese soldiers, but civilian militias of potentially tens of millions of citizens ready to fight. And it would also involve the Soviet Union participating, which means if they won the war with the Soviets' help, they would have to split control and influence over Japan's empire after the war. Or, the second option was to use their new powerful...
Xem mấy lần rồi nhưng mà không nhớ. Nào bắt đầu ngay đoạn đầu à? Something wrong, man. Trận Châu Cảng năm 41 à? Là cũng không đầu lắm. Cái cuối năm 41 này.
Bomb to swiftly end the war, with no more loss of American lives and much less Soviet influence in post-war Japan. They could do it on their own while also sending a message to the Soviets that they were the most powerful.
Và lại nhớ như nó chọn ba nhớ là nó chọn ba thành phố, xong cuối cùng như nó chọn ra hai sao á.
On August 6, 1945,
chọn ra hai thành phố,
they chose the second plan. They dropped this unfathomably powerful bomb on the city of Hiroshima, releasing a hellfire the world had never seen, and killing 140,000 people, almost all of them civilians, forever altering the course of history. 2 days later, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and began...
Cái những kiểu yếu tố lịch sử đúng không? Có yếu tố lịch sử gì đó. Xong rồi nó có mấy yếu tố ấy, để chọn yếu tố lịch sử này, yếu tố con người này, dân số bao nhiêu chẳng hạn, như thế.
And rapidly taking their territory, where the world had never seen, and killing 140,000 people, almost all of them civilians, forever altering the course of history. 2 days later, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and began rapidly taking their territory, When Japan still doesn't surrender, the
Mẹ bọn Nga ăn hôi nhỉ? Đúng không? Nghe gọi là ăn hôi đúng không?
US drops another bomb, this one on the city of Nagasaki. The Soviets continue to rapidly take territory, and it's more clear than ever that it is over for Japan. While some factions of the Japanese army still don't want to surrender, the emperor goes around them and tells the nation that it's over. Japan is unconditionally surrendered.
5 năm.
The Americans moved in, took away Japan's powerful military, prosecuted the war criminals, and sent tens of thousands of troops to the vital island of Okinawa, where the US stayed as the occupying power until the 1970s, and where they still have tens of thousands of troops that serve American interests in Asia, while also being Japan's main source of security. The memory of this war is still in the minds of the people here, especially for those in the cities that were bombed and the southern islands that were invaded. And as this region becomes tense again, Japan is now expanding its military once again, mostly down here on these vital islands. I traveled here to see what that looks like and to talk to the people about what this feels like, what they're worried about. And I'll be sharing that story in an upcoming video.
Let's pray that peace be now restored to the world.
Giờ như bọn Mỹ nó ở Nhật nhiều đúng không? Và kiểu cảm giác nó rất là khó tin khi mà cỡ chưa đến 100 năm trước mà bọn Nhật rất là hồi báo, mà bây giờ bọn Nhật nó rất là dễ thương ấy. Dạo này nó cứ đấy, dạo này cái nội dung của thằng này nó cứ kiểu dùng mỗi map thôi ấy. Trước giờ thằng này nổi, tất nhiên là thằng này nổi tiếng về map rồi, nhưng mà kiểu bây giờ nó chuyển map quá nhiều ấy. Cái này thì đỡ này, cái nào thì hôm nọ xem rồi, nhưng mà cũng hơi phức tạp, xem không xem nổi, xem cảm giác bị lost hơi nhiều. Bây giờ mấy cái phần chiến tranh của mấy cái nước mà kiểu hơi xa xa mình ấy, không nổi tiếng ấy, cũng phức tạp, xem ngu người luôn. How many US troops in Japan now? 2023 đây. 53.000. Đức nhiều nhỉ? Hàn nhiều. Top 5 country with highest numbers US troops are cái gì? Đây là ở lính Mỹ ở các nước. Lính Mỹ có ở Nhật nhiều nhất, xong rồi đến Đức. Máy công ty này, rồi VPN cũng mà được luôn, cay thật. Yeah. How many soldiers are in US Army? Không xem được luôn mà. Hết rồi, cái đấy để xem rồi. Cái để xem trong list rồi. Đang ngắm mấy cái mic, nhưng mà không biết có nên mua không. Đang ngắm cái mic này tầm triệu thôi, nhưng mà sợ mua về đã vứt xó ấy. Này bảo anh Nam bỏ vào giỏ. Thôi hết rồi, cái này chỉ xem linh tinh thôi, trong tí nữa nghỉ. Nốt cái này nghỉ.
Podcastage. Today I'm back with a review of what I think is the best deal in audio, the Behringer XM8500. If you are interested in this microphone, it will cost you only $25. That's right, 25 bucks. If you are interested in this microphone, I will throw some affiliate links in the description down below. And for this review, I'm running the microphone directly into the Focusrite 18i 22nd Gen, recording 24-bit 48 kilohertz, gain set at around 430. I will not do any kind of post-processing, but I may have to boost it a little bit in post, so check the doobly-doo to see what I diddly did. And now let's talk about what comes in the box. Plastic mount of documentation. It has an all-metal body as well as a very firm metal mesh grill with no give to it. As we move around the microphone, there are no buttons or switches. On the bottom, you will find the XLR port. And if it matters to you, this microphone is made in China. And I also want to show you this side-by-side comparison to my 7-year-old XM8500, which I have used heavily. Everything appears to be identical except for a few minor cosmetic changes to the printing on the microphone. Then as far as the...
Đây, xem cái này. Gì nhỉ? Dynamic Condenser.
Greetings, Earthlings. Today, I'm going to explain the differences between a dynamic and a condenser microphone and help you decide which one's right for you. So throughout this video, when I'm talking about a dynamic microphone, I'm going to be speaking into the Rode Procaster, which is a dynamic microphone. And when I'm talking about condenser microphones, I'll be speaking through the Rode NT1A, which, as you guessed it, is a condenser microphone. So first, let's talk about how these different microphones work. And in order to help with that, I did pull some diagrams off of Shure's website, and I've thrown a link in the description directly to that site. As far as the dynamic microphone capsule, you have three main components. The diaphragm, the voice coil, which is actually attached to the component.
Màng loa. Diaphragm là màng loa. Dây voice coil.
The diaphragm, the voice coil, which is actually attached to the diaphragm.
Cái gì?
The diaphragm, the voice coil, which is actually attached to the diaphragm, and the magnet, which is permanently charged and creates a magnetic field. So how this works is when sound waves hit the diaphragm, that actually vibrates the voice coil. And with that movement of the coil within the magnetic field, it converts the audio signals into electrical signals that can be interpreted by your audio interface or by your amplifier. The condenser microphone also has three main components: the diaphragm case, which just holds everything together, the diaphragm, and the back plate. And I should note that this design is known as a capacitor, or it used to be called a condenser, which is why they're called condenser microphones. So when this capsule is charged, it generates an electrical field, and as sound waves hit the diaphragm and it moves closer and farther away from the back plate, this translates the sound signals into electrical signals. And just another note, there are two different types of condenser microphones: a standard condenser microphone, which does require phantom power to actually charge the capsule, and an electret condenser microphone, which actually has a permanently charged microphone capsule. And since I said that, some of you are probably thinking, well, if the electret condenser microphone has a permanently charged capsule, why do I need phantom power? And that's because all condenser microphones have circuitry in them that allow them to work with standard microphone inputs. So regardless of the condenser capsule you have, at the very least, that circuitry is going to require some voltage to work. Now that we have a basic understanding of how these microphones work, let's explore the real-world differences between them. So when we look at dynamic mics, they have a very simple construction, which means they end up being extremely rugged. Dynamic mics also handle extremely loud sound signals really well, and they also do a pretty good job at background noise rejection. On the other hand, they have a relatively low sensitivity, meaning they have a lower output level, and they also most of the time lack a full frequency response. And the last thing I want to point out is that dynamic microphones have a very distinct broadcast sound to them because most radio stations use broadcast mics. Condenser mics, on the other hand, are more complex, meaning they will be more fragile, but this allows them to pick up a wider frequency response, have a more natural sound, and have a better sensitivity or a higher output level. And on the downside, with this type of microphone capsule, you do have to be careful because you can overdrive the capsule with extremely loud noises, and the electronics inside of all condenser microphones do generate a small amount of noise. And I just wanted to throw in a quick comparison of these mics on an acoustic to show you the different frequency responses as well as the off-axis performance.
Cái này cảm giác nó đầy đủ hơn này.
Now moving off axis of the dynamic microphone to show you how much of my voice is picked up as I move off to the sides of this type of microphone. Now I'm just moving off axis of the condenser microphone to show you how much of my voice it picks up as I move around 180 degrees. Now, with all that information, I know you're asking yourself which microphone is right for me. So I think a dynamic microphone is going to be best in live situations because they are more durable, they handle loud noise as well, and they do pretty good at background noise rejection. I also think that if you're in any situation where you're extremely concerned with background noise, or if you want that really standard broadcast sound that you hear on podcasts or radio stations, then a dynamic mic might be right for you. And I think a condenser mic would be the right choice in a controlled environment like a studio. If you have audio treatment, you have control over all the audio going into the microphone. You want that more natural sound, and you're not that concerned with background noise. All right, guys, I guess that'll do it for today. If you found this video fun or interesting or helpful, or you want to see more educational stuff like this on my channel, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what questions you want answered next. If you thought the video sucked, give me a thumbs down. If you want more videos just like this, go ahead and subscribe by clicking the logo directly beneath me. And also, don't forget to vote for the mics you want reviewed next, as well as follow me on all the social media stuff. Links to everything, description down below. I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Hết rồi, hết thứ xem rồi. Đây, sáng mai sẽ xem cái này. Surface Impression and YouTube Notes. YouTube Notes là mới à. Đây, F1 này. Tập huấn Robosim bảng A. The hell. Thôi, đi chơi bạn gái đi Tân. 19:30 rồi, ngồi đây, ngồi nhà cả ngày nha. Nghỉ đây. Bye bye.